and welcome. I am Nick, and this is the Environmental Report. Today we will be talking about the history of environmental reform during the early 1900s. We head over to Filbert, who will talk about Teddy Roosevelt. Thanks, Nick. Anyway, I'm Filbert. This here is Theodore Teddy Roosevelt Jr., 26th President of these here United States of America, serving from 1901 to 1909. He was proudest of his work in conservation of natural resources. This man here established the United States Forest Service, signed into existence of 5 national parks, proclaimed 18 new national monuments under the 1906 Antiquities Act. He also established the first 51 bird reserves. That's like 50 plus 1. I can only count up to 50. He also established 4 game preserves and 150 national forests, including our nation's very first, the Shoshone Forest. My homie Roosevelt here was unapologetic with the use of executive orders extensively to protect the environment, despite Congress believing that he was encroaching on way too many lands or whatever. Now, eventually, Republican Senator Charles Fulton of Ohio, or whatever it's called, attached an amendment to an agricultural appropriations bill that prevented the president from using any more executive orders to reserve any more land. But before the signing of this bill into law, my man Roosevelt used executive orders to establish another 21 forest reserves, only signing that bill in at the very last minute. What a rebel. In total, Roosevelt used executive orders to establish 121 forest reserves in 31 different states. That's my man right here. Now, the first 25 presidents issued a total of 1,262 executive orders. My homie Roosevelt issued 1,081 of them. And now to Filbert to speak about the conservation of natural resources.
Thank you so much, Filbert. Well, let me tell you, in the progressive era, the conservation movement was a movement to preserve wildlife and wildlands. And as you said, Teddy Roosevelt was a big supporter of the movement, opening up national parks and passing many acts like the Reclamation Act and the Antiquities Act. Now we can go over to my love Filbert for more info. Filbert?
Thank you, Filbert. The Antiquities Act was passed by Congress and signed into law by Theodore Roosevelt on June 8, 1906. The act has been used by 16 presidents from Theodore Roosevelt to Barack Obama to designate national monuments, excluding Richard Nixon, Ronald Reagan, and George H.W. Bush. The act also gives Congress the power to declare national monuments and redesignated 32 national monuments as national parks. This includes parks like the Grand Canyon. And speaking of acts, here's Filbert with the National Reclamation Act.
Thanks, Filbert. Now, about the National Reclamations Act, dude. When Congress stated reclamation, they really meant irrigation, such as for projects like dams. They studied over 30 water projects in almost all the western states. This led to the Bureau of Reclamation and beautiful construction marvels like the Hoover Dam, which is right behind us here. Look at it, it's all its glory, dude. Speaking of water, let's head over to Filbert at the radical Hetchy Hetchy Reservoir.
Thank you, Filbert. Now, the Hetchy Hetchy is a valley, reservoir, and water system in California, located in the northwestern part of Yosemite Park, and drains out by the Tuolumne River. It's a beautiful place. Did you know its name is Miwok for Valley of the Two Trees? Cool, am I right? In 1914, the Hetch Hetchy project began, in which the Hetch Hetchy Railroad was constructed, and in 1919, the O'Shaughnessy Dam began construction, which was later completed in 1923, filling the reservoir for the first time that very May. The dam was 227 feet high at the time, now a staggering 312 feet since 1938, and 910 feet long, spanning the valley at its narrow outlet. Despite being the primary water source for the city and country of San Francisco, many debate over whether the Hetch Hetchy Valley dam and reservoir should remain, or if it should be drained out and returned to the Hetch Hetchy Valley to its former state. Now, those in favor of the removal of the dam have pointed out that the dam is a violation of the Raker Act, which explicitly stated that power and water from the Hetch Hetchy Dam could not be used and sold to private interests. But hydroelectric power generated from the Hetch Hetchy project is largely sold to Bay Area customers through Pacific Gas and Electric, which is a private power company. Many preservation groups also argue that draining Hetch Hetchy would open up the valley back to recreation, a right that is believed to be provided to the American people because the reservoir is within legal boundaries of a national park. Now, those against the destruction of the O'Shaughnessy Dam argue that would take away a valuable source of clean and renewable hydroelectric power, which would need to be replaced by polluting fossil fuel generation. Not to mention the cost for the removal of the dam itself, estimated to be at least $3 to $10 billion, and the transport of the demolished material would be taken away from the site along the narrow, winding Hetch Hetchy Road, which would be a nightmare to do. Now, the removal of the dam would also result in San Francisco losing its source of high-quality mountain water, and citizens would have to depend on lower-quality water from other reservoirs, which would require expensive filtration and re-engineering of the aqueduct system in order to meet the needs of San Francisco. Now, there are clearly a number of pros and cons to the Hetch Hetchy project, so what do you think? You can tell us what you think on our website or on our app, available on both the Apple and Play Store. Now to Philbert with the Division of Forestry. Thank you very much, Philbert. Hey there, I'm Philbert. The Division of Forestry, as one could guess, played a big role in the environmental reform. The chief state of forestry at the time was Guilford Pinchot. They passed many important acts and other reforms such as the Newlands Act of 1902, which funded irrigation projects, and Inland Waterways Commission in 1907, which studied the relation of rivers, soil, forest, water power development, and water transportation, and the National Conservation Commission of 1909, which drew up long-range plans for preserving natural resources. Speaking of water and resources, let's head over to Philbert at the Owens Valley Aqueduct. Thank you, Philbert. The Owens Valley Aqueduct is a water conveyance system built and operated by the LA Department of Water and Power. The aqueduct first delivered water from the Owens River to the city of LA on November 5, 1913, under Mayor Fred Eaton. Its construction was controversial from the start, as it ended all agriculture in Owens Valley and has had significant impact on the ecosystem in Mono Lake surrounding areas. In 1971, the aqueduct was recognized by the American Society of Civil Rights Engineers on the list of historic civil engineering landmarks. Now, to Phil Bjork with more. Thank you, Philbert. Now, the national park system had its beginnings when President Grant signed a law in 1872 that Yellowstone was a national park. The system was not truly established until 1916 when the National Park Service was created to preserve both the natural and cultural resources that the national parks had. Thanks to these people, we can enjoy parks like Yellowstone for generations to come. Now here's Golis to close off our program. Thank you, Filbert, Filbert, and Filbert, and of course, Nick. Well, that ends our biannual report on the environment. We'll see you later in 2019 where we'll talk about why the world has ended. Anyway, we'll also be accepting any and all donations to the environmental report at any and all times. Cash only, just hand it to me directly. Please. Please. We're desperately unfunded. We need the money. We need it. Please, if there's any good in your heart, any amount of money will do. And a good morning, good day, good night, and good morrow. I'm Colas for Channel 7 Environmental Report. Yo, you think they notice? I don't get paid enough for this. Where's my paycheck? Stop rolling! Cut the camera.